When I found my mother's old diary, I didn't expect to cry that night. I thought it would just be pages of memories, maybe old recipes or her to-do lists. But what I discovered inside those worn pages changed everything I believed about her and about myself. For years, I thought my mother never truly loved me. I thought she was distant, cold, always too busy to care. When I was young, she never hugged me much. She never said, "I'm proud of you," or "I love you," the way my friends' mothers did. And when she passed away, I didn't shed many tears. I told myself it was because we were never close. But that wasn't true. It was because I didn't understand her. It took me nearly 15 years after her death, to finally open the small wooden box she had left for me. Inside, it was her diary. Brown leather, a bit cracked from time, with her name written in faint golden letters, Eleanor. That night, I sat in silence. The house was empty. The air smelled like old paper and memories. And as I turned the first page, her handwriting trembled before my eyes, and my heart began to break in ways I never thought possible. My mother, Eleanor, was a quiet woman. She wasn't the kind to speak much, but when she did, people listened. Her voice was calm, low, and steady, like the sound of the morning radio that played in our small living room every Sunday. I grew up in a modest home. My father worked at a nearby factory, and my mother taught piano lessons from home. We didn't have much, but our house always smelled like something baking. Bread, sometimes cinnamon rolls, though I never saw her eat much herself. I was her only child, and maybe that's why I always felt too watched, too corrected. She would fix my posture, my tone, even the way I folded laundry. When I painted as a child, she'd quietly correct my strokes. When I sang, she'd whisper, "A little softer, dear." I used to think she wanted to control me. Now I know she just wanted to be perfect because she couldn't afford to be imperfect herself. But back then, I didn't understand. I thought love meant soft words, open affection, and easy laughter. My mother's love was quiet, invisible, like air. You don't notice it until it's gone. She never told me stories about her own youth. Whenever I asked, she'd smile faintly and say, "Not much to tell, dear. Let's focus on your future." I remember feeling frustrated. I wanted a mother who shared secrets, who stayed up late with me talking about dreams, heartbreaks, silly things. Instead, I got a woman who kept everything locked behind polite smiles. When I turned 18, I got into a university in another city. I was so happy to leave home. I remember the day I left, my mother stood by the door, holding a small paper bag. Inside it was a sandwich and a note that said, "Don't skip breakfast." That was her way of saying goodbye. No tears, no hug, just that note. And when I looked back from the car window, she was still standing there, waving softly, her eyes unreadable. At university, I learned to be independent, but a part of me carried quiet resentment. Whenever friends talked about their mothers visiting or calling them daily, I'd smile and lie, say mine was busy or not good with phones. The truth was, we barely spoke. Years went by. I graduated, got married, had my own daughter, Lily. And somehow, I became my mother. I caught myself saying her exact words. I corrected my daughter the same way. "Sit straight, don't talk with your mouth full, be careful what people think." And one day, my little girl, Lily, looked up at me and said, "Mom, why are you always angry?" I froze. I wasn't angry, but I realized that's exactly how I used to see my own mother. Years later, when my mother grew ill, I didn't visit often. I told myself I was busy with work and my family. In truth, I didn't know how to talk to her anymore. I thought it was too late. When she passed away, I stood by her grave feeling empty. No tears came, just a dull ache in my chest, like something unfinished. The next week, I received a small wooden box from her lawyer. Inside was a folded note that said, "For when you're ready." Beneath, the diary. I wasn't ready then. I closed the box and put it away. In my attic. It was a quiet Thursday night when I finally opened that old box again. The house was silent. My husband was asleep and Lily was away at college. It felt like the right time. Or maybe life just decided I was ready. The diary smelled faintly of lavender and dust. Her handwriting was neat, a little slanted, just the way I remembered her grocery lists. On the first page, she had written, "If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. And maybe, finally, you're ready to know me. Not as your mother, but as a woman." I paused there. I had never thought of her that way, as a woman with dreams, fears, and mistakes. To me, she was always just mother. The next line said, "You always thought I was cold, but truth is, I learned to survive by hiding warmth." I felt a strange lump in my throat, and then she began her story. "I was 19 when I met your father. He was kind, full of plans, full of laughter. I loved him the moment he smiled at me in that broken bookstore where I worked part-time." My eyes softened. I never imagined my mother writing about love. She never spoke of it. But here it was, written with trembling tenderness. He wasn't rich, but he promised me the world. We got married young. Too young, maybe. Everyone said we wouldn't last. I wanted to prove them wrong. I could almost hear her voice, quiet, stubborn, strong. As I turned the next page, the tone shifted. "When you were born, everything changed. I thought love would come easily, but I was scared. Scared of breaking you, scared of failing you. Your father worked long hours. I stayed home, counting bills and waiting for him to come back smiling." There was a tiny smudge on the corner of the page, a faded tear mark. He started drinking when times got hard. He never hurt me, not physically, but he stopped being present. I played piano to forget the silence. I remembered that sound. As a little girl, I would wake up in the night and hear the piano, soft, sad tunes drifting through the walls. Back then, I thought she was practicing. Now I knew. She was surviving. The next few pages were filled with small daily notes. Simple things. What she cooked, how tired she felt, small moments with me. She smiled today when I made her pancakes. She fell asleep on my lap. I didn't move for an hour. I just watched her breathe. I wish I could tell her how much I love her without crying. I had to close the diary for a moment. Tears blurred the ink. All those years, I thought she didn't love me, and here was proof she loved me so deeply it hurt her to show it. The next entries grew heavier. He lost his job today. I told him we'll be fine. He didn't believe me. I started giving piano lessons again. Sometimes I wish I could do more, but every coin I earn feels like a drop in a leaking bucket.
She doesn't understand why I'm always tired. She asked why I never play with her anymore. I told her I had work to do. The truth is, I didn't want her to see me cry. My heart clenched. I could see it so clearly now, the exhausted woman behind the tidy home, behind the stern corrections and quiet evenings. I kept reading. Today, she brought home a drawing. She said it's me, but the woman she drew is smiling. I wonder if I ever smiled like that. That line broke me. I remembered that drawing. I had drawn her in a yellow dress, standing under a tree. I thought she looked beautiful, but she never said a word about it. Now I knew. She had looked at it, remembered it, written about it. I turned more pages. The handwriting got shakier. He left for a while, said he needed space. I told him I'd wait. People whisper. They say he's not coming back. I don't listen. I have to stay strong for her. Then one page simply said, she asked me if her father doesn't love us anymore. I said, he loves us in his own way. I hope she believes that. As I read, I realized how much she had protected me from pain. She carried both her sadness and mine. The next part of the diary was written years later. I could tell because her handwriting had changed, more mature, slower. She's grown now, so confident, so bright. I wish she knew how proud I am, but I don't know how to say it without breaking down. She thinks I'm too strict. Maybe she'll hate me for a while, but one day I hope she'll see I was trying to prepare her for a world that doesn't forgive softness. I sat there, reading her words over and over. My chest felt tight. All my life, I mistook her silence for coldness, when really it was fear. Fear of being vulnerable. Fear of losing control. And then came an entry dated only a few months before her death. The ink was lighter, the sentences shorter. She didn't visit this week. That's all right. She's busy, I tell myself. I saw her picture in the newspaper. She's smiling. She looks strong. That's all I ever wanted. If I could tell her one thing, it would be this. Love doesn't always sound like, I love you. Sometimes it sounds like, I'm fine, even when you're not. The last few pages were hard to read. Her health was failing, but she still wrote almost every day. Pain again. Doctor says it's getting worse. I told him I'll be okay. I have to be. She called today. Just for a minute. I told her I was proud of her. She laughed and said, "Thanks, Mom." I wish she knew how much that moment meant to me. Tomorrow, I'll write her a letter. Maybe one day she'll find it. But there was no letter. Only that diary. I turned the final page and found a small photograph tucked between the sheets. It was old and faded. My mother holding me as a baby. She was smiling. A real, full smile I had never seen in life. I pressed the picture against my chest and whispered, "I'm sorry, Mom. I just didn't know." The room felt heavy, yet peaceful, like she was there, listening. When morning came, I was still sitting there. The candle had burned down to wax on the table, and my tea was cold. But I couldn't stop reading. Each page felt like a conversation I should have had years ago. I looked around my house. Quiet, tidy, peaceful. It looked exactly like hers once did. Suddenly, that order didn't feel comforting. It felt inherited. I realized I had become my mother in ways I never noticed, not just in habits, but in silence. The way I avoided long talks with my daughter, the way I swallowed my sadness instead of showing it. Maybe love passes down not just through affection,
but through the fears we never name. I turned another page. She doesn't know that I listen outside her room when she cries. I want to hold her, but what if she pushes me away? I covered my mouth, trying not to sob. How many nights had I done the same with Lily, standing by her door, hearing her cry after an argument, but too proud, too afraid to go in? I whispered, "We both did the same thing, didn't we?" The diary went on. One day she'll understand that love sometimes looks like distance, not because we want it, but because we don't know how else to keep our hearts safe. Those words felt like they were written for me to find, exactly now. I closed the book for a moment and walked to the piano in the corner. It hadn't been played in years. I pressed a single key, soft, hesitant. The sound filled the room, and for the first time, I didn't hear an instrument. I heard her. When I was little, I used to hide under that piano while she played. I'd watch her feet move with the pedals, her hands glide like they were speaking. I always thought she played for herself, but maybe she played so I would feel safe enough to sleep. I kept turning the pages, searching for more. Near the end, a folded piece of paper slipped out. It wasn't part of the diary. It was a letter. On the front, in faded blue ink, "For my daughter, when the music stops." My heart thudded. I unfolded it carefully. "My dearest girl, if you ever find this, it means my songs are over. Please know I was never angry with you. I was only trying to make you strong. The world can be unkind to gentle hearts, and I feared it would break you, but I see now that strength isn't the absence of tears. It's the courage to feel them." I read it twice, then a third time. Every word felt like a hand on my cheek. If I could live again, I would hold you more and correct you less. But remember, every correction came from love, even when it sounded like silence. Be softer with your daughter than I was with you. Let her see you cry. Let her see you live. I pressed the letter to my chest. I thought of Lily. When was the last time I told her I loved her without rushing off to do something else? When was the last time she saw me vulnerable, human? That's when I realized this diary wasn't only a confession, it was an inheritance of understanding. I took a deep breath and went to Lily's old room. Her childhood photos still hung on the walls. Birthdays, school plays, messy smiles. I sat on her bed and whispered, "I'm sorry if I ever made you feel unloved, my sweet girl." A soft wind moved the curtain as if the house itself exhaled. That night I called Lily. It was late, but I didn't care. When she answered, her voice was sleepy. "Mom, is everything okay?" I hesitated, then said, "I just wanted to tell you that I love you, and I'm proud of you." There was silence, the same silence I once shared with my mother, and then Lily said, "Mom, are you crying?" I laughed through tears. Maybe a little. We talked for an hour, longer than we had in months. She told me about her classes, her friends, the little things. And when we hung up, I sat there smiling through the tears. It felt like a circle had closed. But there was one more page left in the diary, a page I hadn't noticed before, tucked near the back cover. It was short, just a few lines. If she ever finds this, tell her to play the song I left unfinished. I froze. An unfinished song? I rushed to the piano again and opened the bench where she kept her music. There, under a pile of yellowed pages, was one titled, "For My Daughter." Half-written notes stopped midway across the page. I sat down and tried to play it. The melody was simple, tender, and then it stopped where the music ended. My fingers rested on the keys, and in that silence I heard what she wanted, for me to finish it. So I did. I added a final line,
soft, rising, hopeful. It felt like saying goodbye and thank you all at once. When the last note faded, I whispered, "The music never really stopped, Mom. It just changed hands." For the first time in years, I felt peace, not the empty kind, but the warm, quiet peace that comes from finally understanding.
When I finished reading that page, I sat in silence for a long time. The house around me felt like it was breathing. Every wall, every picture frame seemed to whisper the years I had ignored her pain. It was already late. The wind outside had softened. The stars were faint, hidden behind thin clouds. I closed the diary gently, as if I were tucking her into bed. And then I cried. Not like a child this time, but like a woman who finally understood. The next morning, I went to her grave. It wasn't far, a quiet place under a large neem tree where sunlight filtered softly through the leaves. I brought fresh white lilies. She used to love them. As I knelt there, I whispered, "Mom, I read your diary, and now I know." The air felt still for a moment. I could almost hear her voice in the rustling leaves, saying, "I told you, my dear, love never dies. It just waits to be understood." I stayed there for hours, telling her everything I couldn't before, about my children, my regrets, my loneliness, and the guilt that had eaten away at me all these years. For the first time in decades, I didn't hold anything back. I told her how angry I had been, how I blamed her for leaving, for choosing sacrifice over her own happiness. And then I told her how wrong I was. She didn't choose to suffer. She chose love. The kind of love that demands silence, patience, and sometimes distance. In that moment, forgiveness didn't feel like an act. It felt like breathing after years underwater. When I walked back home that evening, the world looked different. The air was lighter, the trees seemed brighter, and inside my heart, there was peace. A few days later, I took the diary to my daughter, Ella. She's 18 now, strong-willed, a little impatient, just like I was. "Mom, what's this?" she asked. "Your grandmother's diary. It's time you knew her story." She flipped through the pages with curious eyes, and I watched her, realizing that every generation carries a part of the one before it. The pain, the love, the mistakes, all of it continues until someone decides to understand. That's what my mother did, and now it's my turn. A few months later, I decided to rebuild her old house. Not as it was, but as a small community library, a quiet place for women to read, write, and share their stories. I named it the House of Silent Hearts. Every time I open its doors, I feel her presence, soft, forgiving, proud. And when I see a young girl sitting by the window, writing in her diary, I smile, because I know that's how it begins again. Sometimes at night, when the world is asleep, I still read a few pages of her diary. The paper has grown thin, the ink faded, but her words still breathe. She once wrote, "Love, my dear, is not always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet that saves us." And that line, it changed everything. if you ask me now what I've learned from her story, I'd say this. Love isn't about being understood every time. It's about giving even when no one sees. It's about waiting even when no one calls. And sometimes it's about forgiving when you realize they were just doing their best. So here I am, 45 years old, a mother, a daughter, and finally at peace. I don't have all the answers, but I have something far better: understanding. And in that understanding, I found my mother again. Not in the diary, not in the memories, but in the quiet spaces of my heart, where love, misunderstood for so long, finally found its voice. If you still have your mother, talk to her. If you've lost her, talk to her anyway. Because love, real love, never stops listening.